The first morning Evelyn Hart woke up at Turner Ranch, she almost forgot where she was. For a brief moment, she expected to hear the distant sounds of Chicago traffic outside her bedroom window, the honking cars, hurried footsteps, and busy city life she had known her entire life. Instead, she heard silence, not empty silence. Peaceful silence. Then came the soft whinny of horses outside and the faint creaking of the windmill turning slowly beneath the sunrise. Evelyn opened her eyes and stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. Above her, pale morning light spilled through lace curtains, painting golden patterns across the small bedroom. The room was simple but clean, with handmade wooden furniture and a thick quilt folded neatly at the foot of the bed. For the first time in months, her chest didn't feel tight with anxiety. Back in Chicago, everything had fallen apart so quickly. After her father's death, the family's fortune vanished beneath hidden debts and failed business deals. Their large home had been sold. Friends disappeared overnight. Even relatives turned cold once the money was gone. Evelyn had spent weeks terrified about what would happen to her younger sister, Clara. Then the lawyer mentioned the agreement. A promise between her father and an old friend from Montana. Marriage to Cole Turner. At first, Evelyn thought it sounded absurd. Marry a stranger? Move across the country to a ranch she had never seen? But desperation had a way of changing people. And now, somehow, she was here. A loud crash downstairs startled her thoughts, followed immediately by muttered cursing. Evelyn blinked in surprise. Then another crash echoed through the house. Concerned, she quickly put on her shoes and hurried downstairs. The sight waiting in the kitchen nearly made her laugh. Cole Turner stood beside the stove holding a frying pan while smoke filled the room around him. A completely black piece of bacon sat forgotten in the pan like burned leather. The rugged rancher looked horrified. "I had it under control 2 seconds ago," he muttered defensively. Evelyn covered her smile with her hand. "Were you trying to make breakfast?" Cole scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "Thought I should probably feed my guest." The hesitation before the last word didn't escape her notice. He still couldn't quite call her his wife. Honestly, neither could she. But there was something unexpectedly sweet about seeing this large, intimidating rancher completely defeated by breakfast. "You're going to burn the house down." Evelyn teased gently. Cole looked genuinely concerned. "Yeah, that's possible." She laughed softly and stepped toward the stove. "Move over." To his credit, he obeyed immediately. Evelyn rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning the disaster while Cole stood nearby like a scolded schoolboy. A few minutes later, fresh eggs sizzled in the pan while coffee brewed beside them. Cole watched quietly. "You cook?" he finally asked. "My father couldn't boil water," Evelyn replied with a smile. "Someone had to learn." Cole nodded slowly, studying her with those deep brown eyes that always seemed filled with unspoken thoughts. Everything about this woman confused him. She didn't complain about the ranch, didn't look disgusted by the dust or worn furniture, didn't act superior the way he secretly expected wealthy city people to behave. Instead, she moved through the kitchen like she belonged there, and somehow that unsettled him more than rejection would have. They ate breakfast together in awkward silence until Evelyn noticed an old framed photograph sitting on a nearby shelf. A younger version of Cole stood beside a smiling woman with silver hair. "Your mother?" Evelyn asked gently. Cole's expression shifted instantly. The softness disappeared behind guarded walls. "Yeah," something in his tone warned her not to push further. Evelyn lowered her gaze respectfully and changed the subject. After breakfast, Cole offered to show her the ranch. The property stretched endlessly beneath the bright blue sky-rolling hills, grazing cattle, wooden fences, and snow-covered mountains rising in the distance like giants protecting the valley. "It's incredible," Evelyn whispered honestly. Cole glanced sideways at her. "Most people just see hard work. I think both can be true." That answer stayed in his mind longer than he expected. As the days passed, Evelyn slowly settled into life at Turner Ranch. She helped repair old curtains in the house, organize shelves, and even convinced Cole to let her plant flowers near the porch. The workers quickly grew fond of her after she began bringing fresh lemonade and homemade lunches out to the fields. To everyone's surprise, the elegant city woman adapted faster than anyone expected, but not everyone approved. A few days later, Evelyn accompanied Cole into the nearby town of Red Creek for supplies. The moment they entered the general store, conversation slowed, people stared openly. Whispers spread almost instantly. "That's her? She actually came? She's too pretty for him." Evelyn pretended not to notice, but she saw the tension tighten across Cole's shoulders. The rancher grabbed supplies quickly, avoiding eye contact with everyone around him. Outside the store, Evelyn finally stopped walking. "Why do you care what they think?" she asked softly. Cole kept his gaze forward. "Because they're probably right." Her heart sank slightly. "You really think that little of yourself?" He gave a humorless laugh. "You don't know me well enough yet." Before Evelyn could respond, an older woman from town approached them warmly. "Well," she said with a grin, "aren't you the prettiest thing Red Creek's ever seen?" Evelyn smiled politely. The woman leaned closer and whispered loudly enough for Cole to hear, "Don't let this grumpy cowboy scare you off. He's got a good heart buried under all that loneliness." Cole groaned. "Mrs. Bennet," but Evelyn noticed something important. Cole didn't deny being lonely. That evening, after dinner, Evelyn sat alone on the porch watching the sunset melt across the mountains in shades of gold and orange. A few moments later, the screen door creaked behind her. Cole stepped outside holding something awkwardly in one hand. Wildflowers. Small purple and yellow flowers tied together unevenly with twine. He looked almost embarrassed offering them to her. "Saw these near the creek," he muttered. "Thought maybe you'd like them?" Evelyn stared at the flowers, genuinely touched. No expensive bouquet from Chicago had ever felt this sincere. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Cole sat carefully beside her on the porch steps, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then quietly, almost too quietly to hear, Cole admitted, "I still don't understand why you came here." Evelyn looked out toward the fading sunset. "Maybe," she said softly, "I was searching for a place that feels real." Cole turned toward her slowly. And for the first time in many years, the lonely rancher allowed himself to wonder if this woman might change everything. By the time winter loosened its grip on Montana, the Turner Ranch no longer felt cold. Not to Evelyn. The farmhouse had slowly transformed over the past few months. Fresh curtains now hung in the windows. Wildflowers bloomed beside the porch. Fence, laughter occasionally filled rooms that had once known only silence. And though neither of them spoke openly about it, everyone in Red Creek could see the truth. Cole Turner was changing. The lonely rancher who once avoided town gatherings now lingered longer at the general store whenever Evelyn came along. He smiled more often, talked more. Even the permanent tension in his shoulders seemed lighter these days. Of course he still acted gruff whenever anyone pointed it out, especially around Evelyn, which was exactly why Mrs. Bennet found the situation endlessly entertaining. "You two dance around each other worse than nervous teenagers," the older woman declared one afternoon while helping Evelyn choose fabric at the tailor shop. Evelyn nearly choked. "We do not," Mrs. Bennet laughed knowingly. "Honey, that man looks at you like you hung the moon." Evelyn's cheeks turned pink instantly. The truth was, she had noticed it too. Sometimes she would catch Cole staring when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Not in a bold or arrogant way. More like he still couldn't quite believe. She was real. As if every morning he woke expecting her to disappear. And honestly, Evelyn's own feelings frightened her just as much. She had come to Montana out of desperation. This marriage was supposed to be practical, temporary even. So why did her heart race every time Cole smiled at her? Why did the ranch suddenly feel more like home than Chicago ever had? And worst of all, why did she secretly wish he would finally kiss her? That Saturday evening, Red Creek prepared for its annual Harvest Moon Festival, a tradition filled with music, dancing, lanterns, and food. Nearly every family within 50 miles attended each year. Evelyn stood upstairs in front of her bedroom, mirror nervously smoothing the fabric of her dress. It was soft blue silk with delicate sleeves that rested gently against her shoulders. Simple by city standards, yet elegant enough to make her feel beautiful again after months of hardship. Still, anxiety twisted inside her stomach. She and Cole had never attended an event together before. Downstairs, Cole waited near the front door, adjusting the cuffs of his dark shirt uncomfortably. He looked more nervous than a man facing a charging. Bull, he wasn't afraid of hard work or storms or pain. But beautiful women? That was another story entirely. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made him glance upward and instantly forget how breathing worked. Evelyn descended slowly, one hand lightly holding the railing. The soft blue dress moved gracefully around her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. Warm lantern light from the hallway illuminated her face, making her look almost unreal. Cole's chest tightened painfully. Good Lord, for several seconds he simply stared. Evelyn stopped at the bottom of the stairs, suddenly self-conscious beneath his gaze. "Well?" she asked softly. Cole opened his mouth. "Nothing came out?" Which only made her more nervous. Finally he managed to whisper, "You look—" His voice failed again. Evelyn tried not to smile. Cole exhaled sharply and shook his head in disbelief. "You're too beautiful," he muttered. "This hardly seems fair." The sincerity in his voice stole the air from her lungs. For once, there was no teasing, no awkwardness, only honest admiration. Evelyn felt warmth spread across her cheeks as Cole looked away quickly, almost overwhelmed by the sight of her. The drive into town felt strangely intimate afterward. The moon hung low above the mountains while cool night air drifted through the truck windows. Their hands rested close together on the seat between them, close enough that even the smallest movement might touch. Neither dared move first. The festival glowed with golden lanterns by the time they arrived. Music floated through the crisp evening air while couples danced beneath strings of lights stretched across the town square. The moment Evelyn stepped out of the truck, heads turned everywhere. Women admired her dress. Men stared openly. And Cole immediately hated all of them. He stayed close beside her as they walked through the festival, his protective instincts growing stronger by the second. Old Turner, a tall rancher named Wade, approached with an easy grin. "You've been hiding this gorgeous woman from us?" Cole's jaw tightened instantly. Evelyn smiled politely. "Nice to meet you." Wade tipped his hat charmingly. "If your husband doesn't dance, I'd be happy to fix that problem." Before Evelyn could answer, Cole spoke flatly. "She's not dancing with you." Wade raised both hands innocently, though amusement sparkled in his eyes. "Easy there, Turner." Evelyn bit back a smile as Wade walked away laughing. "You were jealous," she teased quietly. Cole looked horrified. "I was not." "You practically growled at him." "I did not growl," she laughed softly. "You absolutely did." Cole muttered something under his breath that made Evelyn laugh even harder. The sound wrapped around him like warmth. God, he loved hearing her laugh. The realization hit suddenly. Hard. Cole stopped walking, loved, not admired, not cared about, loved. Panic and wonder collided inside his chest. Evelyn turned toward him curiously. "Cole?" The lantern light reflected softly in her blue eyes as she looked up at him. And in that moment, surrounded by music and dancing and moonlight, Cole Turner realized he was completely, hopelessly in love with his wife. The truth terrified him, because loving someone meant losing them. And men like him didn't get to keep women like Evelyn Hart. Before he could stop himself, Cole reached for her hand. His rough fingers intertwined carefully with hers. Evelyn's breath caught softly. "I should probably tell you something," he said quietly. Her heart pounded. "What?" Cole looked at her with an honesty so raw it almost hurt. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he admitted. "But it's not just your face." Evelyn's chest tightened. "It's the way you make people feel," he continued softly. "The way this ranch feels alive again when you're around." His voice lowered. "The way I feel alive again." Emotion shimmered in Evelyn's eyes. For one breathtaking second, it seemed like the entire world disappeared around them. And then, "Evelyn?" A familiar male voice cut sharply through the moment. She froze instantly. Cole turned slowly. A tall man wearing an expensive black coat stood near the edge of the festival lights. Handsome, confident, dangerous, and, judging by the sudden fear on Evelyn's face, someone from her past had just arrived in Red Creek. The peaceful night exploded into chaos. Smoke billowed into the dark Montana sky as terrified voices echoed through Red Creek. Festival lanterns swayed wildly while townspeople ran in every direction, shouting warnings and calling for loved ones. "Fire! The Miller barn is burning! Get water!" Cole reacted instantly. Years of ranch life had trained him for moments like this. "Stay behind me," he ordered Evelyn firmly before sprinting toward the edge of town. But Evelyn wasn't about to stand. Helplessly, by the time they reached the Miller property, flames had already swallowed half the large wooden barn. Sparks shot upward like angry stars while frightened horses kicked violently inside their stalls. Children cried. Nearby, men formed frantic bucket lines. The heat alone felt unbearable. Cole grabbed a nearby ranch hand. "Anyone trapped inside?" "Two. Horses still in the back stalls," the man shouted. "We can't reach them." Without hesitation, Cole tore off his coat and wrapped a cloth around his mouth. Evelyn caught his arm. "Cole, I'll be fine." But the fierce look in his eyes terrified her. Before she could argue further, he charged straight into the burning barn. The crowd gasped. Inside, smoke filled Cole's lungs instantly. Flames crawled across wooden beams overhead while panicked. Horses screamed in fear. Sweat burned his eyes as he forced himself deeper into the inferno. "There you are," he muttered after spotting the trapped animals. One horse nearly knocked him down trying to escape. "Easy?" Cole coughed roughly while cutting ropes loose. "Easy?" Outside, Evelyn immediately took control of the growing panic. "Move the children farther back," she shouted toward the crowd. "And bring blankets and water over here." People obeyed. Almost automatically, even Nathan Sinclair, who had remained in town after the festival confrontation, looked surprised watching her organize. Frightened townspeople with calm authority. Mrs. Bennett hurried toward Evelyn anxiously. "The fire's spreading toward the storage shed." Evelyn turned sharply. The storage shed sat dangerously close to nearby homes. If the flames reached it, half the street could burn. "We need more water now," Evelyn yelled. Several ranchers rushed to help. Moments later, the barn doors burst open as Cole emerged through thick smoke, leading two terrified horses into safety. Cheers erupted around him, but Cole barely heard them. Because suddenly a loud, cracking sound thundered overhead. His eyes widened. The barn roof was collapsing. "Everybody back!" he roared. The crowd scattered just as burning beams crashed violently inward. Heat exploded across the night sky. Evelyn searched desperately through the smoke for Cole. Then relief nearly made her knees weak when she spotted him stumbling away. From the flames, coughing hard but alive, their eyes met briefly across the chaos, and in that single moment, Evelyn realized something terrifying. If anything ever happened to him, it would destroy her. But there was no time to process the feeling. Another scream shattered the night. "My daughter!" A woman pointed frantically toward the smaller feed barn farther uphill. Evelyn's blood turned cold. Through thick smoke, a little girl could be seen trapped near the doorway, too frightened to move. The fire was spreading fast. Before anyone else reacted, Evelyn ran. "Evelyn!" Cole shouted in horror. She ignored him. The smoke burned her eyes as she raced uphill toward the smaller barn. Sparks rained through the air around her while terrified townspeople yelled for her to stop. Inside the barn, the frightened child cried uncontrollably. "It's okay," Evelyn soothed gently despite her pounding heart. "I've got you." She reached the little girl and quickly wrapped her arms around her, but the moment Evelyn turned toward the exit, a burning beam crashed down behind them, blocking the doorway. The crowd outside erupted in panic. Cole froze for half a second. Then, Pure terror slammed through him harder than anything he'd ever felt in his life. "Move!" He barked at everyone blocking the path. Without waiting, he charged directly into the burning structure. "Cole, no!" Nathan shouted, but nothing could have stopped him. Inside, smoke swallowed everything. "Evelyn!" Cole yelled desperately. Her voice answered weakly through the haze. "Here!" Relief hit him so hard he nearly collapsed. Cole found them crouched near the back wall, shielding the little girl from falling sparks. The moment Evelyn saw him, emotion flooded her face. "You shouldn't have come in here." He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "And leave you?" He coughed harshly. "Not happening." Another beam cracked overhead. The building wouldn't last much longer. Cole quickly wrapped his jacket around the little girl before lifting heavy debris away from a side opening near the wall. "Go!" he ordered Evelyn. She pushed the child safely through, first toward waiting hands outside, then suddenly the floor beneath. Cole groaned dangerously. Evelyn's eyes widened in fear. "Cole!" The wooden boards collapsed partially beneath him, throwing him hard against the wall. Pain exploded through his shoulder, but all he cared about was getting her out alive. Cole forced himself upright and reached for Evelyn desperately. "Come here!" She grabbed his hand tightly. For one terrifying second, flames surrounded them from every side. Then together, they burst through the side opening just as the barn collapsed behind them in a roaring explosion of sparks. The crowd erupted in relieved cheers. The rescued child's mother sobbed with gratitude, but Evelyn barely noticed any of it because Cole suddenly dropped to one knee, exhausted and struggling to breathe. "Cole!" She knelt beside him immediately. Soot covered his face. Smoke darkened his clothes, and his hands trembled from exhaustion. Yet even now, his first instinct was checking whether she was hurt. "You okay?" He rasped. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. Instantly. "You idiot," she whispered shakily. Cole gave a weak smile. "Yeah, probably." Without thinking, Evelyn threw her arms around him. And for the first time since arriving in Montana, she stopped holding back. Cole froze as she clung tightly to him beneath the burning orange sky. "I was scared," she admitted, softly against his chest. Something inside him shattered completely at those words. Slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around her too. The world around them faded away. No townspeople. No fire. No fear. Only her. Cole rested his forehead gently against hers, his voice rough with emotion. "I couldn't lose you." Evelyn's breath caught. He looked directly into her eyes now, completely defenseless. "I think I've loved you since the moment you stepped onto my porch," he confessed quietly. "I just didn't know what to do about it." Tears slipped down Evelyn's cheeks, because she had been waiting to hear those words for far too long. "I love you too," she whispered. And finally, at long last, Cole Turner kissed his wife. Beneath the glowing Montana sky, while sparks drifted like falling stars around them, summer painted Montana in gold. The hills surrounding Turner Ranch swayed beneath warm winds. Endless fields glowed beneath the afternoon sun, and the rebuilt barns stood proudly stronger than before. Wildflowers stretched across the valley in bright colors, while horses grazed peacefully near the fences. For the first time in years, the ranch truly felt alive. And at the center of it all stood Cole and Evelyn Turner. Word had spread quickly through Red Creek that the couple planned to renew their vows properly before family, friends, and neighbors. Their original marriage arrangement had been born from obligation and desperation, but this ceremony? This one was built entirely on love. By sunset, lanterns hung from every fence post around the ranch. Long wooden tables overflowed with food. Music drifted through the warm evening air, and nearly the entire town gathered beneath the glowing Montana sky. Mrs. Bennett cried before the ceremony even started. "I'm emotional," she insisted while dabbing her eyes dramatically. "And your husband finally smiling all the time is unsettling everyone." Evelyn laughed softly as Clara adjusted the final buttons on her dress. This time, Evelyn wore white. Simple. Elegant. Perfect. She stared at herself in the mirror for a quiet moment, emotion swelling inside her chest. Months ago, she had arrived at Turner Ranch frightened, uncertain. and heartbroken by the collapse of her old life. Now she could hardly recognize that lonely woman anymore. Because somehow, in the middle of nowhere, she had found everything that mattered. A home, a family, and a man who loved her with his entire heart. Outside near the ceremony arch, Cole looked like he might pass out from nerves. "You fought a wildfire without blinking," one ranch hand teased. "But marriage scares you?" Cole adjusted his collar for the 10th time. "I already married her once. Then why do you look terrified?" "Because this time she actually loves me back." The ranch hands burst into laughter, but Cole meant every word. He still couldn't fully believe this was real. Even after all these months, part of him expected to wake up alone in that old farmhouse again. Sometimes he still caught himself staring at Evelyn simply because he needed proof she was truly there. Nathan Sinclair had long since returned to Chicago, after finally accepting Evelyn's choice. To everyone's surprise, he had even apologized before leaving town. Not that Cole trusted him completely, but Evelyn said that counted as growth. The music shifted softly, signaling the beginning of the ceremony. Conversations faded, then Evelyn appeared at the end of the lantern-lit path, and once again, Cole Turner forgot how to breathe. The sunset painted golden light across her white dress, while summer wind lifted strands of her dark hair gently around her face. She looked radiant not because of expensive fabric or jewelry, but because happiness glowed from her eyes. Now, real happiness, the kind that reached all the way into her soul. Cole's chest tightened painfully as she walked toward him. God, how had someone this extraordinary chosen him? By the time Evelyn reached the altar, tears already burned behind Cole's eyes. Mrs. Bennett openly sobbed into a handkerchief nearby. "I raised that boy," she whispered loudly to anyone listening. "He used to look like a thunderstorm with boots." Laughter rippled warmly through the crowd. Even Cole smiled. The local pastor began speaking while sunset colors deepened across the valley. But honestly, Cole barely heard any of it. Because Evelyn's hand rested in his, because she kept smiling at him like he was the best thing that had ever happened to her, because after years of loneliness, shame, and heartbreak, he was finally home. When it came time for vows, Cole looked suddenly terrified again. Evelyn squeezed his hand gently. "Breathe, cowboy." Soft laughter spread through the guests. Cole exhaled shakily before speaking. "You know," he began quietly, "the first time I saw Evelyn standing on my porch, I thought there had to be some mistake." The crowd smiled knowingly. "I looked at this beautiful woman from the city and honestly thought." He laughed softly at himself. "How could someone like her ever belong with someone like me?" Evelyn's eyes shimmered with tears. Cole's voice grew rougher with emotion. "I spent a long time believing I wasn't enough. Not rich enough, not charming enough, maybe not even worthy enough to be loved properly." His gaze locked onto hers. "Then Evelyn walked into my life and somehow made this broken ranch feel warm again." Several guests wiped their eyes quietly. Cole swallowed hard before continuing. "She saw good in me long before I could see it myself." His voice softened. "And every day since then, she's loved me with more patience and kindness than I ever thought possible." Evelyn was openly crying now. "So I promise," Cole whispered, holding her hands tighter, "to spend the rest of my life loving you the same way you loved me when I didn't know how to love myself." There wasn't a dry eye left in the crowd. Then Evelyn took a shaky breath and smiled through tears. "When I came to Montana," she said softly, "I thought my life was ending." Cole frowned immediately. "That's not exactly romantic." The guests laughed warmly. Evelyn grinned before continuing, "But losing everything led me here." Her eyes softened as she looked at him. "And here I found something far more valuable than money or status." She touched his cheek gently. "I found a man with the kindest heart I've ever known." Cole looked seconds away from crying himself. "You once asked how someone like me could ever be your wife?" Evelyn whispered emotionally. "The answer is simple." She smiled beautifully. "Because real love has nothing to do with wealth, appearances, or perfection." The wind moved softly through the fields around them. "Beauty fades," Evelyn said gently, but a loyal heart never does. Cole finally lost the battle against tears. The pastor laughed softly. Well, son, you may kiss your wife before the entire town starts crying harder than you are. The crowd erupted into warm laughter and applause. Cole pulled Evelyn into his arms and kissed her. Slowly beneath the glowing sunset, while lanterns flickered all around them, cheers echoed across the ranch. Music began playing again, and as the stars slowly appeared above the Montana sky, Cole stood beside the woman he loved with one overwhelming realization filling his heart. The lonely rancher who once believed nobody could truly love him had finally found where he belonged, right beside her.